you. Hello there. Another year, a brand new venue. I'm Martha Teichner, and with me is Jamez McCorkle. And I think you're already well known here. I'm just going to, I can't, could you turn the lights a little down so that I can see the audience, please? Because I'm going to ask a question. How many of you have seen A Poet's Love? So a fair number. How many of you saw Omar? How many of you saw Eugene Onegin when Jamez was Lenski? Some of those too. So there's some familiarity. Good. Well, start at this show. After Omar, how did this show come to be? Why Schumann Dichterliebe as opposed to something entirely different?
Well, I was having lunch with Mina one day while I was here last year, and he had said he had seen some of my Instagram posts of me playing and singing Dichterliebe. And at the time, I had already posted maybe half the song cycle already. And he brought it up and said, well, you know, it would be probably a good idea if maybe we did this at the festival. And I was like stunned. I was like, really? Because at the time I hadn't played professionally for years. And
The piano.
Yeah. And so I said, absolutely, hell yeah, let's do it. That's how it came to be.
Why Schumann? I mean, do you have a passion for Schumann? Is it particularly difficult? And of course, playing and singing it at the same time, is that even harder? Or why Schumann?
Well, at first, when I was much, much younger, I was always told to learn this song cycle because it's something that students do. It's in the repertoire for students to learn usually. But I just kept putting it off and saying, no, I don't want to do that. Those songs sound boring. And and so years pass, and you know, I'm playing through Clara Schumann's piano concerto. And I get to the second movement, and in the second movement, there's a fragment. And it caught me off guard for a second, because I was like, wait a minute, I've played this before. This sounds so familiar. And then it hit me. It's the first song of Dichterliebe. And from that moment, I decided to look in the history and the love life of Clara and Robert Schumann. And I became obsessed with their love story. And I ended up, from that moment, just learning Dichterliebe. And that's how I fell in love with it. But in terms of playing and the difficulty of playing and singing at the same time, I equate it to doing 2 Olympic sports at the same time. Imagine yourself like in a lap pool, you know, and also trying to throw a shot put. It's a lot of juggling of the entire body, because at a high level, your whole body is your instrument, and you have to be able to give push and pull for both instruments at the same time.
I took Jamez out to lunch yesterday so that we could get to know each other a little, and you said something really startling about what doing this show means to you.
Oh, well, you know, in life, you have failures. And sometimes, as you get older, you start to think that maybe those things that you did that were failures were a waste of time. And this opportunity became a full circle moment for me. It made me realize that maybe the failures things that I considered personal failures weren't failures at all. They were all leading up to this moment. And it made me feel like everything that I've done in my life had purpose. And it sort of freed me. It made me feel like a huge weight was off my shoulders, as if I was like finally able to fly through the sky.
Was it important for you to do this?
This was the proudest moment of my life, actually.
Why would you say that? I mean, we know you from Omar and other things that you've done, and when you said that to me yesterday, I was really surprised because I kept thinking, oh, the first time you set foot on an operatic stage in a major opera house, or doing Omar, a role you created that is now huge and so on, and yet this is the moment that you're proudest of.
Yeah, and I feel like I can do anything now.
Your superpower, right. So before we get to why it's complicated, just quickly for people who discover that the translation is not in the book, what's Dictor Liebe about? What's the story of the songs?
Well, the overarching story is a man who's trying to come to terms with a love that he's lost, an unrequited love, and how he deals with the emotions, despair, to disillusionment, to trying to reconcile, and also to, at the very end, to sort of give these sad feelings away. In the last song, it says to put them in a giant coffin and bury it in the sea. And so that's pretty much it.
And how does that relate to the Schumanns?
Well, it was an interesting time, actually, when this was composed. This piece was composed, actually, right before Robert and Clara were allowed to get married by the court, because Clara Schumann's father said, absolutely not. You will not be with my daughter. You have no money. You have no prospects. So he basically just took her from him, and they would sort of communicate secretly through letters, and but this piece was written at a time when he was probably at his most distressed.
So it expressed the emotions that are expressed in the language of the poetry that it came from were basically what he was going through.
Exactly, and the fact that, the beautiful thing is that Robert Schumann is able to amplify those very poignant words from Heine and just make them blossom and bloom into something even greater.
Speaking of blossoms and blooms, tell us about the projections. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, there is a live performer and incredible projections of animation on the screen while Jamez is playing and singing.
Yeah, we found Mira Matreik, who is an amazing animator. She has these beautiful TED Talks if you go and look her up on YouTube. And she does animations where she interacts with the animations she creates, and she can make it as if like they're coming from her body or just from thin air, or it's almost like magic when you watch it, But yeah, we also hired Mr. Coakley to come and dance for us.
Tell us his story. His story is, I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, if I'm right, Philip can correct me. But he is he works in the offices here for years, right? And no one really knew much about the fact that he could do something like this, and so they hired him to do it.
And it turns out he's a really good dancer.
Yeah, he is.
And mime, I imagine, is part of what his background as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Huh. So let's get back to the beginning now. You talked about your sense of failures and so on and so forth. I assume you're talking about the fact that you started out in the direction of becoming a concert pianist, but ended up an opera singer.
Yeah. Well, I started off as a classical pianist from 4 years old.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans, yeah. And well, I guess from the beginning how it started was I was in church, and the choir director decided to play a piano solo one day. And I was staring at my mom. I was like, wow, that's so cool. I want to do that. And so she went up to her after the church service and said, can you give him some voice lessons? And piano had always been in my family because we always had a piano in the house. So I had voice lessons with her for a while.
Voice or piano? Voice or
For
piano?
piano only. I had never actually sung a note until high school. But I studied with her for a few years until I outgrew her a little bit, and then
You told me you were a terrible piano student.
I was, but I was a terrible piano student. I didn't practice. I didn't like to practice.
And yet this is a terrible piano student who was performing with orchestras. How old were you the first time you performed with an orchestra?
Like 13 or 14.
So I wish I were that kind of terrible piano student. So what happened?
So Hurricane Katrina happened. And, you know, I was shuffled around from Houston to going to a boarding school in South Carolina, the Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities, because my piano teacher wanted me to continue studying piano. She didn't want me in Houston, so she flew me to that school, and I stayed there for a year, and then for my senior year, I went back to New Orleans. But during all that, you know, I became lazy. Like, I didn't want to do anything. Like, there was so much going on in my life, and my piano teacher was getting fed up with me, you know, because I wasn't practicing. I was coming into my lessons just sight reading things. And she had that Juilliard mentality, you know, because she graduated from there. And so she kicked me out of the school. She kicked me out. But before Hurricane Katrina, a vocal student at NOCA, which is the name of the school in New Orleans Center for Creative Arts.
That's the school that when Marsalis's dad was a teacher.
Exactly, yeah. It's the famous art school in New Orleans. And the one vocal student, because every Friday we'd have a performance class, and it was with everybody. And so he sang Total Eclipse by Handel. And if you know that, it's really melancholic and dark and brooding. And at the time, I was in my goth phase. And so I was like, oh, this was right. This is all me. I'm feeling all this. And like it goes, total eclipse, no sun, no moon, all dark. So I was like, yes, give me all of it. And so I went to the voice teacher, and I asked her, can I have this music? And, you know, she looked at me a little weird. She was like, I'm sure she was thinking, what in the world this piano student's going to do with this music? So I took it home, I memorized it, and I brought it back to her, and I sang it for her. But she didn't say anything. So Hurricane Katrina happens, I'm shuffled around, I come back from my senior year of high school, and the piano teacher kicks me out. The voice teacher comes running up to me as I'm leaving out, and she says, you know you can join the voice department if you want to. And so that's how I became an opera singer.
Well, be that, given that it was your senior year, you had to decide what to do next as far as your musical education.
Yeah. So, you know, I knew that I didn't want to stay in New Orleans. I needed to get out. I had to go because I wanted to be free. I wanted to, you know, become who I needed to become. So there's a very specific day that I made the switch, and I remember it very vividly. It was November 20th. And if you know anything about music conservatories, the deadline for applications is December 1st. So I had 10 days to learn all the repertoire for all these conservatories, memorize it, video it, send it off in time to get it there by December 1st, which is insane. I ended up getting a call back for all of them except for Juilliard. And then I went to do the auditions, and I got a full ride to I think about half of them, and ended up going to Mannes School of Music in New York City because of a very influential teacher there that really wanted me. Her name is Ruth Falcon. You know who that is.
Now, just in this chaotic process of getting ready to do all this stuff, your mother died, right?
Yeah. So she passed away right before my college auditions. And, you know, there was a lot of traumatic things that was going on at the time, too, family-wise, and with my mother passing away, you know, I went through a very depressed phase, which probably wasn't the best time for me to go to a new city, especially New York City. I sort of got lost when I went to New York City, and sort of spiraled, was out partying, clubbing, drinking, doing awful things to my body, and it was a tough time in my life.
Did you learn to sing?
I learned to sing through the sadness. I was told to just try and funnel it, you know. I was lucky enough to find Ruth Falcon, who knew what was going on in my life, and she was very patient with me. My God, she was a patient woman. I mean, she went to the ends of the earth for me to make sure I had what I needed, you know. Even when I decided that it was time to leave New York because everything was just spiraling out of control, she flew down to New Orleans to try and get me into Loyola. And so she got me into Loyola, where I was there for a year and a half. And yeah.
When you were in New York working with her, two things struck me, and number one was that you went in as a baritone, and number two, you were a busker in the New York City subway.
Yeah, I had to fund my partying habit somehow.
And how much did you make every day?
Like around $300, $400.
A day?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I had a system. I was all prepared. You know, I'd sing on the number one train line, going all the way up and down. I'd first listen around on the train to any foreign languages, you know, if I heard them, so that way I could pick something that they would recognize. And I'd get on the train, I'd say, "Excuse me, everybody, my name is Jamez McCorkle. I'm bringing opera and art song to the subways to help pay my rent, so if you like what you hear, please help me out." And that was a bold-faced lie. I was not paying for my rent. Yeah.
So you started out as a baritone?
I did start out as a baritone.
Even in the subway?
Yeah, yeah, I did. Although I did throw in some tenor things here and there, some arias.
How did you become a tenor going in as a baritone? And why?
Well, I never really believed in voice categories. I just always believed in singing beautifully, and singing healthily. As long as you're singing beautifully and healthily, that is proper direction you're supposed to go. 'Cause once you start putting yourself into these boxes and telling yourself, oh, I need to be this type of tenor, I need to have this type of voice quality, and then all of a sudden you just lose all of your potential because you're just trying to pinpoint this one thing instead of just being open to possibility.
How did that switch occur? I mean, obviously there are different roles if you're a baritone than if you're a tenor. Did that have anything to do with it, or was it just how you felt?
Well, also I have the temperament of a tenor too.
What is a tenor temperament?
You know, wear the heart on the sleeve and go for the love interest and stuff like that. You know, I'm not the baritone who is, you know, I don't know how they do.
So at what point did you make that switch?
I made that switch when I think it was my last year when I was at the Curtis Institute.
So you went from Loyola to Curtis?
Yeah, I went from Loyola to a semester off to Curtis for 5 years. And then I was around my last year that I made the switch to tenor. I was being sort of pushed in that direction from the former dean of the Curtis Institute, of the vocal department, Michael Eliason. He was nudging me to become a tenor here and there. You know, he was trying to say, "Hey, go take a look at this. Tell me what you think about this." You know, and so I do that here and there. But then, you know, at the time, I was still kind of playing around, you know. And he made me get really serious one day. He brought up, so why do you sing? Why are you singing? And I said, I just want to, you know, make enough to survive, to live a normal life, to doing the thing that I love to do. You know, he said, then, well, why the fuck are you here? You know, because this is the Curtis Institute of Music. This is the #1 school in the country. Why are you here? And it hit me, and I was like, I'm not realizing my full potential. I need to become the best. I need to realize this potential that I have that was given to me.
And then what?
And then I started to get more serious, and I started to realize that singing tenor, I get a lot more money.
I'm sure there was more to it than that.
Yeah. But I ended up just loving what I was doing more. You know, I started to make good quality friends while I was at Curtis, and they made me become better. And also, at the time, I became best friends with an oboe player while I was there. And he was like, why don't you play for me? Because he knew that I played piano, and I had like a grand piano in my apartment, so he would come over, and we just like played through things. And he was like, let's make some recordings. And so he like brought out my old piano instincts in me. So, you know, the environment that I was in just set me off in the path of success. And I tried to keep also those friends that I made that kept me on that path around me closest.
When you finished at Curtis, did you automatically, instantly get the roles that you wanted, or was it hard to get started as opposed to sort of bursting on the scene instantly?
So, when I was a baritone at Curtis, I was winning all the competitions. I mean, you name it. The Gerda Listener competition, the George London competition, the whole New York circuit. I was just winning money hand over fist. Like, I was killing it. But nobody was giving me contracts. Not a single one. weird, right?
Were other winners getting contracts?
Of course, yeah. They were getting jobs, and
Was it a race issue?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. That's not something that I ever choose to think about, because it can put you in a dark place and make you think that everybody's racist against you. And so I choose not to go down that route sometimes. I like to think maybe I can just do better. I can focus it somewhere where I can technically become better, But I ended up making the switch to tenor. I didn't tell you this, actually.
You could tell us all.
Actually, Lenore Rosenberg, if you know her, she is the one here that gave me that Eugene Onegin contract. And she, at the time, was also working at the Metropolitan Opera House. I made the switch to tenor, and mind you, she was also doing all the competitions, so she had always heard me sing in the competitions, and she always loved me. Before my first performance contract, which was the Eugene Onegin here, I did receive one other cover contract, which means I wasn't performing, I was just covering the role. But it was at the Metropolitan Opera House, right when I changed to tenor. And at that moment, that's when I officially knew that that is the direction I need to go.
And
she made it clear.
How big a deal was doing Eugene Onegin here for you?
I was nervous, so nervous, I mean, it's my first performance role, and granted, you die halfway through, which is a luxury. And so, it's fun. That's actually one of the most fun roles. You get to go out there, you sing a big, loud, you sound glorious, and everybody loves you. And then you go in the back and you just have like a little whiskey and you just chill and relax.
You talk about sing big. Do you start with certain roles and then graduate upward to bigger and bigger roles, or more and more comprehensive or difficult roles? You talk about big sing.
Yeah, that is the ideal thing to do. But me and my personality, I always want more. I want to sing the big things. And I've always been that way, that type of person. Even when I was a pianist, and then when I became a singer, I was always looking at things that were way too big for me. But I've always had people who were nearby that, always kept me on the right path to make sure I'm singing the right things at the right time. For example, I know that my big path in life at the final goal, which is, years from now, to sing Wagner things, especially since I used to be a baritone, and having the lower extension is a luxury, But I would always try and sing those things a little too early.
Hmm. Well, that can be a problem if you're not ready.
Yeah, that's true, and that's what managers are for. I love her to death.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did Omar happen?
I think it was because they liked me when I came and did the Onegin before the pandemic happened, and then they asked me to do it before the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and then it was pushed by, and then we were finally able to do it.
When you decided to take it on, was it at that point simply a role, or was it something more? Was it something? It seems to have made a huge impression on everybody who's come in contact with it, whether they're audiences or whether they're the Pulitzer Prize people. Did you know what you were getting into, and the enormity of what it's becoming?
I knew it was huge because of just the story of it itself is something we've never seen on stage. Um, and also it's American history that most Americans don't really know about, you know? And so that in itself is a draw because they're going to be curious and be like, oh, I really want to go see what this is about, you know? But for me personally, it was a very big journey of exploration because I didn't know about him either. And neither did like 99% of the people who were involved.
Talk about the arc of exploring who Omar was, and did it have an effect on you that's long-lasting? Did it change you in any way, doing that role and learning about Omar?
I mean, the fact that his resolve to continue to have faith in what he believed in, because he knew it was true, no matter what anybody said or what anybody did to try and change him or to tell him that he should live his life a certain way, you know. He still maintained his inner truth. And that's something that I've taken with me, especially because, and that hit me really hard, because even going through my life, I've always known the path that I am supposed to take, even when some people were telling me otherwise, you know. And I'd smile in their face and say, oh yeah, that's so cool, you know. But I'd just keep trucking on my path, and I was like, wow, this is how I sort of related to him in a sort of elementary way.
Do you feel that doing Omar, there's a
mosquito
flying around up here. Did you get him?
Yeah.
Good. Did it change you in any way?
It hit me the first performance. Like when I was on stage and I was just sucked into the moment and I had no choice but to be in that moment, you know. It's sort of, it was heavy. Like there were several points where I was actually crying on stage and I had to like keep it in because like he's not crying in that moment. What am I doing, you know? Keep yourself together, man. And so.
Well, of course, there was all the drama with your foot and completely blocking the whole production as a result of your injury.
Yeah, it was a hell of a time, that's for sure.
Now, how do you, a world premiere of what was destined to become important, and all of a sudden you're in a boot and on crutches, and the second dress rehearsal you're sitting with your foot on a piano bench at the side, and the understudy is acting the role. How do you calm yourself to get to opening night and somehow make it through?
Yeah. Well, that was a bit of a technical error. She's gonna hate me because you know she's around here backstage. We hired. Well, but she's laughing. But there was a little technical error. I made a couple of complaints saying, I can't see the stairs, and I need a light there, and the light never came after, and I ended up taking a little tumble and ruining my ankle. And luckily, it wasn't broken, but everyone was frazzled, and they ended up restaging the entire show.
In 24 hours?
Yeah, before the show opened. And during the show, for the first half, I was in a wheelchair. And, you know, they were wheeling me around, and I was getting fed up because I felt like I wasn't connecting with the audience. I felt like I wasn't telling his story properly. And during intermission, I said, I'm doing the original staging. I'm getting out of the wheelchair. I don't care how much pain, and I got my painkillers right here. We're good, you know. So I got out of the wheelchair, and everybody was frazzled backstage. I'm like, we're going back to the original staging. Everybody, we're going back to the original staging. And I ended up just fighting through all that pain to get his story told the proper way.
Did you feel that by doing that in the intermission that you had kind of, okay, I can break through and I'm in the right frame of mind to make this happen and to do what I'm meant to do?
Yeah.
What was it like for you when you had to kind of deal with all that chaos, leading up to finally getting up and doing it your way?
How was it to deal with the chaos?
Yeah, I mean, were you secretly in a panic?
Secretly in a panic.
Overtly in a panic?
I don't think it was that much of a secret. But you have to just put it to the side, and you're. I don't know. I have this mentality that if there's something that I'm supposed to do, I have to get to the finish line, as best as I possibly can. And so I try not to really make excuses much. I just get it done.
Being in a brand new opera that you originated the role, what's that like as opposed to being in an opera that you can go back and listen to and even potentially watch other people's performances?
This opera actually in particular made me delve deep as an opera singer in ways that made me realize I should approach all roles this way. I actually had done 2 performances of Omar before I had even come to Spoleto, of my own creation. I had 2 concerts where I sang the entire opera, everybody's role, all the chorus roles, my role, and to get a full, deeper understanding of the entire opera. And I put it on for 2 groups of people, which was insane. But it prepared me in a way, mentally and physically, for what was about to come.
How many you did here, L.A., then which was the next one after L.A.? San Francisco? No.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
And then we up next, was there a 4th one that we did?
Chicago?
We have Chicago coming up in 2025, but we have, before Chicago,
San
we have San
Francisco.
Francisco. And Boston, that was the one I was thinking of.
So you were the constant in all of the productions you've done since.
Yeah.
Yesterday we talked about what the effect that doing the opera had on each of those companies.
Yeah.
And your role in being the glue, if you will.
Yeah, each time the opera came, and we had a different group of chorus members, So it was like it was reaching a new set of fresh minds and ears each time. And me, being the same person, I've already experienced all these emotions, I've gone through it, so I'm kind of, for lack of a better term, I'm on autopilot when I go to new places now. But it's fresh for them. And they have to reconcile all these emotions that they have because, they're on stage and they're being treated poorly by the opposite race, and they have all this history that's being bombarded upon them and just feeling buried and almost drowning in it, And it gets to a point, usually, where we have to stop rehearsal because it's getting so bad, the mental state of everybody in the chorus, that we have to have a group meeting, and we bring together everyone. And we have the health people from the opera house, they come down and make sure everyone's okay, and I'm trying to do my best and do my part because they come up to me and they have questions for me. How did I deal with all this? How did I do it? And so I try to be the glue or the rock that, as much as I can, to help people understand that everything's going to be okay.
When you do a show like Omar, as opposed to, well, it's in a sense, it could be interpreted as a double-edged sword, because if you, the history of African-American performers in opera, it tended to be so often Porgy and Bess, and you get relegated and pigeonholed, and okay, that's where African-American opera singers end up oftentimes. Is there, even doing something like Omar, that's a real story, that was created by African Americans, is there a pitfall? Is there a danger? Or are we somehow beyond that?
Only time will tell, you know? But I know for certain the music itself is transcendent. I mean, take, for example, Julie's aria. I mean, it's almost Puccini in nature. I mean, you give that to a singer, you can see the direction of the voice, of where it's supposed to go. Like, the work itself allows you to hear the potential of voices as well. So in that way, there is a future for this opera, you know?
Is there has there been a breakthrough where African American opera singers are mainstream now, as opposed to still experiencing discrimination?
In what way?
Well, in the roles that they get, in the kinds of operas that they're cast in.
Has there been a breakthrough?
I mean, to the degree that, I mean, I know that there are many who are performing all over the world, but is there still some residual?
There is. I mean, there always will be, I think. But the sad nature of it is, it almost, if you really want the type of career that you long for, it really comes down to management. It comes down to the people that can help have you have control of your life. Sometimes you're blessed with good management. They have the right connections to be able to get you heard by specific people, to make sure that you can be in the room, at least to be heard, at the very least. But it's tough out here to be an opera singer. I mean, it's 90% luck, honestly, and 10% skill.
Have you ever experienced discrimination because of being African American?
I mean, but like I said earlier, if I did experience it, I'd choose not to really even think about it. It's not something I think about.
In terms of growing as an opera singer, or fulfilling what you feel is the kind of requirement to do what you need to do on stage, tell me about your regimen. You don't have a traditional regimen in terms of how you prepare to go on stage and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, buckle up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, my regimen, honestly, it starts, if I have a performance one day, it usually starts 2 days before. Or actually 3, because I start to not be in sunlight the 3rd day before the performance. So I'm constantly drinking an obscene amount of water, always. I think maybe a bottle of, I'm going to be very gentle with my estimates and say maybe a bottle of water every 30 minutes.
It's like preparing for a colonoscopy. But before I go to bed, I make sure I have 2, so that way
I am able to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the restroom and then keep myself hydrated through the night and have one more after I wake up. And then when I wake up again for the final time, I have 3 bottles of water, and I wait to go to the restroom, and then I have 2 bottles of water, and then I wait to go to the restroom, and then I have 1 every 30 minutes until I get to 1 hour before the performance time. And then that's when I stop because I don't want to pee on stage. But other than that, on performance days specifically, sometimes before if it's a big role, the day before if it's a big role, there's no talking, there's no sneezing, there's no coughing, there's no, I don't use my vocal cords in any possible way imaginable. I suppress all those types of things. If I feel a sneeze coming on, I hold my nose, I make sure that it goes back down. I do not waste my voice on people that didn't pay for the seats.
Well, that's understandable. You don't warm up then.
Well, you bring that up. I believe in time management. I've deconstructed my voice. It may not be the right thing for other people, but it works for me. I have come to realize through my very overly observational skills that at the 12-hour mark of being awake, my voice is already where it needs to be. If I'm properly hydrated, if I'm not using my voice at all, the moment I open my voice is when I step on that stage. I have complete confidence in my voice.
So you don't need to warm up.
I never warm up.
And over time, using these particular techniques and so on and so forth, how do you work toward those bigger and bigger roles like the Wagner?
Well, I mean, you have practice times where I'm not I don't really care about it the same way as if it's a performance. If I'm practicing for something, I don't care about not speaking to people or anything like that. I just practice. I have to learn the music. You have to do what you have to do.
You don't have special things to sort of expand your skills to get to those.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. I'm just curious
Special
because
skills
I'm just. You start with. You said you like big sing roles, but when you want to kind of get to the next level, in your mind, get to the next level, what do you do to enhance your skills to get to that next level, to achieve your goals in terms of having the best voice you can, singing the most extraordinary roles that exist?
I mean, when it boils down to it, it's all about having consistency in your sound. You want to, every time you step on the stage, have the same quality of voice. And the only way to get there is to be as meticulous with your regimen as possible. I know what I may have talked about may sound extreme, but to get to the level that I aspire to, you have to be that way.
The discipline has to be constant.
Yeah. I mean, for example, for yesterday's performance, it was a matinee. I hate singing at matinees because it messes with my 12-hour time frame. So if you realize that, I have to wake up at 2 a.m. And so the day before that was another performance, but that was in the evening. So I only had 3.5, 4 hours of sleep. But I have to stay awake so that way my voice will be consistent.
That's tough. That's really tough. I mean, I think of Pavarotti behaving badly and going out on stage and sounding horrible. Now, are you planning on doing anything going forward that involves piano and singing the way you've done the Schumann?
Well, hopefully, there are talks that we're gonna be taking this on tour. Hopefully, we get a good recording, we can convince some folks. Hopefully, we can convince Wigmore Hall, maybe.
Ooh,
here and
that's
there.
nice.
Who knows? We'll see. But there's also, I want to convince maybe the guys at Spoleto to commission something else. There's this wonderful, wonderful pianist and singer who's at Juilliard right now. Her name is Chelsea Guo. And she was a double major at Juilliard, if I'm right. And she had to make a decision whether she was going to continue to be a pianist or continue to be a singer. And she said she wanted to become a pianist. So she continued studying piano at Juilliard. And she just recently came back from the Warsaw competition, at the Chopin competition in Warsaw. And I was on her Instagram, I was like, wow, this is amazing. She's playing and singing all of these Strauss songs, and I'm like, wow, what if we did something together? What if we had like dueling pianos or something like that you brought up the other day? That was a good word for it. Dueling pianos, where we're like sort of having inside of our own sound worlds together, and we're just sort of dancing around each other and singing a complete opera like that. Like that would be amazing,
And so this is not just one and done with doing a piano.
I sure hope not. I hope that this can inspire other people like me that they don't have to just do one thing or just stay in one field of focus, especially in the classical music world. Because in the classical music world, people are always like, if you were learning an instrument, you're only learning this instrument, and you have to become good at this one instrument, Whereas like in jazz or in general music in general, people are multifaceted and they go off and they do a bunch of things. Why can't we do this as well?
What's coming up for you?
Massive roles, my God, I'm excited. I have an Ariadne of Naxos coming up at the Royal Danish Opera in Denmark. I have Jennifer, the Lotsa and Jennifer coming up in Antwerp and also Hamburg. I have, the Omars are coming up as well. I also have a Die Frau und Schatten coming up. Like all big things, and so I'm finally seeing my voice go in the right direction that it's supposed to achieve like my ultimate dream.
Which is?
So my number one goal in life is to become the first black tenor to sing the leading tenor Wagner roles in the Ring cycle at Bayreuth. That is the goal. And so hopefully I can achieve that and see that realized.
Do you want to be a household name and world famous? You're getting there.
That would be nice, right? That
Yeah.
would be nice. If it happens, it happens. But along the way of that goal, that would be cool.
Is there a role that you, other than the Wagner, that you just are dying to play?
Oh, well, also, speaking of Wagner role, I forgot to mention that I got singing my first Wagner contracted role, actually, at Santa Fe Opera. They're doing Die Walküre, and I'm singing Siegmund. Yeah, that's exciting. But you were saying...
Are there any other roles are there characters and roles that you really want to play other than Wagner?
They're roles that I probably won't. Of course, you have things that I want to sing a Rodolfo, but it's probably not the direction that I want to go in.
Why not?
I mean, vocally, but I would love to be able to sing something like that, But
Because of course, you at least if Omar is any indication, and Lenski, you inhabit those roles totally.
I know, it's my personality. Yeah.
I think we should ask if anyone has any questions. I can't. Let's start here. The lady in sort of pinkish, yeah, you. Oh, his diet.
Yeah, when I'm singing, I must be in a ketogenic diet. I must be in ketosis, because that's the only way that I'm able to control my sleep. When you're in ketosis, I can turn off the lights and I'm out immediately. Doesn't matter.
Say what you ate for lunch.
Well, we went to Gao Pao Gaucho,
Right at the.
a Brazilian steakhouse, because it fits my dietary restrictions easily. I don't have to worry about anything out of the ordinary popping
He
up.
ate one kind of meat, and every time they'd come around with one of those swords with some other kind of meat on it, he'd say, "I want that one. I want the specific one." And
Because they would come with cheese wrapped or honey soaked meat and stuff. I was like, I don't want any of that. I can't have sugar because I don't want to spike my insulin levels, right? Because you want to be able to control your body as well as you can.
okay, the lady in the hat, please.
Your voice is your instrument, and I wonder if you sing to please yourself and what you hear, or if you sing to please the audience and what they hear, or a combination.
Well, I love singing in the shower and hearing myself. That's a great time for me always. But but I guess if you were to delve a little deeper, that sort of gets into almost, on one side you have self-indulgence, and then on the other side you have stylistic choices. And you have to sort of have a balance between the two. You sort of want to be able to do both in order to be as original as you can be,
But for you,
For me.
yourself,
What do I do? Honestly, I don't like the way that I sing, but I know that I sing well because I scrutinize my voice so much. I always find the tiniest little imperfection and I obsess over it. So I don't really enjoy listening to myself. So I guess in a sense, I do just love giving it out to everyone else.
What do you listen to?
What do I listen to? In terms of other people
Music.
or music? Well, I listen to metal music. I love metal music.
There's somebody back there. And do you listen to other opera singers? Do you have anybody that you're fascinated by or emulate or just admire or hate?
Well, right now I'm really in love with John Vickers. I mean, just the energy, the focus, the sheer emotion that he brings to everything. Sometimes at the sacrifice of his voice. It's beautiful to listen to. He is, for me, the top.
Now, there was, first, the lady over here in the blue, please.
I'm an oboe player, so I happen to an oboe player and who is he? But the second thing with the performance you did yesterday, how tricky was that to coordinate with the animation, the timing, and all that? Because that seems tough to me.
So what happened to the oboe player? Well, we're best friends. He is actually in town today. He's flying in today to see the show tomorrow. He is with the Buffalo Philharmonic, and we went to Curtis together, and he's doing very, very well. He's actually just invited me up to, I have to go now, to his show in September because he's coming here to this. So yeah, he's doing very, very well. But in terms of this show, so these first two performances have been very special. a couple of things have happened.
It seems like a pattern with you.
Yeah, I don't know. Bad luck seems to follow me, but you just gotta fight through it. Right?
Explain what happened with the piano.
So, during the first performance, in the middle of the performance, I was playing, and one of the keys decided, and made up its mind that it wasn't going to push down anymore. So, I jammed my finger, and I'm like, oh no, my finger, I hurt my finger. And I'm still playing. I'm like, oh wait, I have to figure out how I'm going to avoid that key now. And so now I'm making all these mental gymnastics about what I'm going to do.
And singing.
But I got through it, and nobody noticed a damn thing. So that's, thankfully, thank you, Jesus. And the performance went really, really well. And then the performance yesterday, everybody was scrambling to get a new piano in here because the piano tuner came in and said that there was no way he could repair it. And so they called around and got a new piano shipped in 30 minutes before the show began. And so I had a little bit of time to get a feel for the new piano, and it sounds wonderful. Oh, if you're going to the new shows, oh my goodness, it sounds so good. Yeah.
So what else happened?
Finish answering the question. They follow me. If I go faster or slower, the animations and the dancer follow me, which is a luxury. I love that.
And they can slow down the animations or change the tempo of them?
Oh yeah.
And that's done up there or something?
Yeah, they're having fun up there.
How does it work? Is there a deep enough space behind the screen so that that Jamal can?
Yeah, there's a gigantic cavern back there, so that way you can have depth and be able to shrink and grow the shadows, and then also there's a projection there and also projection in the back, so that way you can make things appear and disappear, and it's a really cool setup that she has.
It looks almost spontaneous, even though it couldn't possibly be.
Yeah, exactly.
The lady in the front.
Yeah, you're right. It's something I've been thinking about, especially since I don't have any I'm not keeping up with my water supply. It's been on my mind. Also, I wouldn't want to be going to the restroom every a couple of times,
So what time will you go to bed tonight in order to do tomorrow's performance?
Well, tomorrow's performance is at 4, so I have to wake up at 4, which means I usually get 6 hours of sleep, so 6 hours before that is the latest that I can go to bed, so that's 10 o'clock p.m. But just to be safe, I'll probably be in bed sleeping by 9.
And when do you eat? Do you time the eating according to the...
Oh, yeah. I have a meal right before I go to bed, and then I have a meal right when I wake up. I don't waste any time. I have it already set up in the refrigerator. It's easy here because there's a Chipotle here, and I just get some barbacoa, and I just have a barbacoa meat that I have right before bed and right when I wake up.
Did you, Annie?
You and I actually met at a conversation, not But I have so many questions, the festival will go on and we'll chat. But listening to you, I've been thinking about an athlete. Really what you're doing is, I used to run, and you're conditioning yourself. Do you also exercise? I mean, with all the water and the heat, you also, how do you maintain your stamina?
Now I'm in the process of losing a ton of weight, actually, intentionally. To sort of gain more stamina back, I'm just constantly losing more and more weight. Because it makes it easier to move around, and you're less out of breath when you're on stage, and it makes it overall easier to do. And the way that I do that is also through ketosis, which also helps with handling your hunger. Because if I eat sugar, there's no depth to how much I will eat. I can eat. When I was going to high school, this was me at my biggest. I think I was a little over 400 pounds.
Wow.
And eating very unhealthy things. Like I'd go for lunch to McDonald's and I'd get 8 double cheeseburgers and just eat them all.
Wow.
And
it didn't make you sick?
You get used to it. Have you not seen 600 Pound Life? Yeah, you have to maintain a healthy lifestyle to be singing at a top level, for sure.
Do you have to work out as well?
Nowadays, I want to. I want to look good. I want to look good on stage. I want to be that superstar, that everybody likes. Like you on stage, you're like, wow, that guy's hot. I want to do that guy, But I want that. And that'll just also catapult me even further. Yeah.
Do you sing differently heavy than you do thin?
I haven't noticed anything.
I just
Not
wondered,
really
because there are all these stories about
Yeah, and I've heard
heavy
them
women
too.
singers, for example, who they say, oh, she lost weight and now she can't sing.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about one person in particular, I think that was because of drugs, but that was something else. But I personally haven't noticed a difference in my sound at all. As long as it's gradual, I guess, you're not doing too much too quickly, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, you, please.
Have you written an autobiography?
I don't think I'm old enough for that yet. Well, she's the one to tell me if I got enough material.
Well, I think eventually you will. I think that it's premature.
I think so, too.
My opinion. That isn't to say you don't have a great story. It's just that you'll have a lot more of it in 15 years. Anybody else here? Okay. Well, go ahead.
Maybe it's just a comment because it happened to me too, but can you talk just a little bit about what it means that Spoleto takes a chance on you?
I think that the hiring of Mina was the right person for this, because the history of Spoleto is taking chances and experimenting with music, right? And Spoleto, in my mind, is the place that pushes the classical music field forward and just trying to break boundaries. And the fact that they took a chance on me to do something that, only one other person in the world is doing professionally right now, because there's one other person in Berlin who is also playing and singing a song cycle. I tried to meet up with her when I was in Berlin right before I came here, actually, but unfortunately she had some personal things that happened and we weren't able to get together. I was hoping to do some things. But the fact that they can take chances on somebody like me without even really knowing if it's going to work out, that's nuts, right?
But you've been here twice before.
No, but I mean, like, for something
For
like
this.
this is, I'm glad they did. And this is going to change my life forever, I think.
How?
I mean, I'm sure now, just think about it. Like, everybody's going to take me so seriously now. They already have. I mean, the fact that I can play at this level and sing, what other singer can do that, you know? Who? Rachel Finland, the one in Berlin.
She would, I would say, is sort of a pianist who has gone back to some of her singing roots rather than a singer that's gone back to her piano.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there a difference between the way you're known here versus the way you're known in Europe?
Well, the way they know me in Europe now is because I had a very influential jump in at the very last minute, which ended up getting me contracts at a bunch of opera houses. They were doing an opera by Reimann based on King Lear. It's called Lear. And it's atonal music. And they gave me a phone call. I was in New Orleans. They were like, can you get on a flight tomorrow and come and take over for someone who has to drop out? And I'm like, you got it. It was during the pandemic, you know, and I was like, I needed the money. So I said, absolutely. And I was on that plane just like memorizing the music furiously. And so that's how I'm getting big over there now. And getting to do bigger rep, because that's when they first started to see me in Europe singing bigger repertoire through that role. But over here in the US, at this point, everybody now knows me for Omar, which in itself is sort of Wagnerian in nature, the Omar role itself, because at the end of the opera, it's just like a freight train. It just keeps going and going and going, you know, pushing your voice to the extreme at the very end. And so now everybody sees that I'm capable of having that type of stamina to get through large works like that, and they're definitely considering me for bigger things.
So the pandemic, you said, changed everything for you.
The pandemic absolutely changed everything for me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Because?
Well, all of the roles that I had before the pandemic were tiny little roles, absolutely minuscule. And then once the pandemic happened, everybody, you know, lost all their contracts. Everybody canceled everything, so I lost all my roles. And then when everything opened back up, all of a sudden, I was just getting big role after big role, and it was like being showered from the heavens with a magical career, you know? And so the pandemic was not good for a lot of people, but it was good for me.
Is it magic for you, having a magical career? I mean, it seems to be taking shape very quickly and very sort of explosively.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe, honestly. I'm just...
Well, anybody who's heard you can believe it. You know?
Because, you know, at the time I was thinking to myself, is anybody really going to consider me for anything real? Because I was just like doing these tiny little roles here and there. I was like, is no one ever going to take me seriously? You know, and I guess they were, but they were already booked up.
Well, I'm glad it's changed.
Yeah.
Anybody else here? Okay. Well, thank you very, very much.